If your income changes month to month and your mood changes with it, this episode is for you. Founders, freelancers, creatives, salespeople on commission, and anyone living on bonuses. You don't need perfect prediction. You need a system to a smoother wealth journey. Today, I'm giving Income Stabilization Blueprint. That's your base pay versus good month rules, plus simple runway math so you can stop guessing, stop panicking, and start building real wealth optionality. Download the Income Stabilization Blueprint on the website. Let's build your peace. What's happening, my optionality builders, my high income earners? We are building real power on purpose. Welcome back to another episode of the Do Different Better show, where we talk wealth, wisdom, and money moves, simple, strategic, and for grown folks only. I'm your host, Elaine Rasmussen, CEO and founder of Connective Institute, Social Impact Now, and Do Different Better. And don't forget to check out my website, www.dodifferentbetter.com. But I'm also the managing director for the Integrated Capital Fund. Now, on today's episode, it is for anyone whose income is inconsistent. That includes founders, small businesses, freelancers, consultants, artists, and all you creatives out there. And yes, even you salespeople, especially those that are straight commission, they're on a draw plus commission, or even a salary with a quarterly or annual bonus that can really swing your financial year. If you've ever had a month where you felt unstoppable and the next month you're staring into the abyss like, do I need to update my resume? Or you start meal prepping out of spite, this is the episode for you. It's called If Your Income is Random and Your Paychecks Don't Have to Be. And here is my promise for this episode to you today. You don't need a perfect prediction. You need a system for a smoother wealth journey. And most people with variable income think the goal is to continue guessing what the future is going to look like. How much will I make next month? What clients are actually going to come through? And will my sales hit at the same time that I'm going to actually need the money? Or maybe it's, will this gig pay on time? Or will this client pay on time? Maybe it's, will my bonus be what I think it is? All of that is the prediction game, and it's quite exhausting. And most of the time it's inaccurate. So instead of trying to predict, we're going to build a system that absorbs all of your volatility. Because what makes variable income stressful is not the variability itself. It's the mismatch between unpredictable inflows and very predictable outflows. I don't know about you, but I used to say this all the time. Your rent really doesn't care that your client paid late, and your mortgage company doesn't care that your commission check didn't drop when it's supposed to, or your childcare doesn't care that your sales cycle is really, really long and you're really waiting to close that client. And your utilities don't accept the market is really weird right now as payment. So what happens is you get on this really shaky ground feeling, and that just doesn't feel good. Some months you feel rich and some months you feel very, very fragile. And that whiplash creates anxiety. It creates overchecking, sometimes overspending to make yourself feel better, and then overcorrecting. And it's not because you're necessarily irresponsible. It's because your system isn't smooth. It doesn't smooth out the rough edges. Now let's name the core problem. This is what I like to call the various problems. Most variable earners have fixed or semi-fixed obligations. Those are things like your housing, your transportation, your insurance, your debt payments, your subscriptions, and especially for my small business owners, taxes. This can be this quarterly silent killer. But sometimes there's also family support obligations. So your baseline costs are actually very steady. However, your income is not. And without a smoothing system, you'll end up doing usually one of three things. Number one, you end up spending like a good month is actually permanent when it's not. Or 2, you're freezing like a slow month is going to be forever. Or 3, you use debt to bridge gaps. And that's not necessarily a bad thing in and itself, but without a system to pay on time, that leads to the same dark road. That's how variable income turns into variable peace. Now, here's an important reframe. Revenue is not the same as pay. Sales is not the same as take-home pay. Invoices are not the same as available cash. And if you're a founder, I want to say this very, very clearly. A high revenue month does not mean you can automatically pay yourself more. That's not how any of this works. What it does mean is your business had a high inflow month. That inflow may still need to cover taxes, expenses, and future stability. Now, if you're on commission, a high commission check does not mean your lifestyle should permanently upgrade. It means you had a good production month. Good months are meant to build future calm, not future commitments. Now, we anchor this to your frameworks that I've talked about on the show. And this is so that there's a consistent arc. Remember, your baseline, your buffer, and your brick house still matter. But in variable income, you need an additional layer. You need runway and a pay plan. So here's the stability optionality bridge. Stability is predictability and buffers. Optionality is liquidity and the ability to choose. Variable income requires both of these, more so than anyone else. So, what are we building today? We are going to be doing 3 things. We're going to have a variable income pay plan, which is your baseline pay plus a good month pay. Number 2, a monthly pay yourself workflow with a simple cadence. And 3, runway math, so you aren't making decisions that are emotional responses. And by the end, you'll have an income stabilization blueprint structure that makes slow months less scary and good months more strategic. So before I get into closing out this segment, I want to speak to particularly my high income earners who may still feel broke. That is probably because these are my variable income people, and you might feel this much more intensely. And so I want to be able to speak to you all specifically. If you're a high performer with a variable income, maybe you're on commission and you're just really good at your job. You're a really good salesperson, or you're really good at closing. And so you're going to have these wonderful bonuses that lead you to think that, oh, I can go out and buy that bag. Oh, I can go out and buy that watch, or I can go and upgrade my car. Maybe you earn a lot annually, but you're still feeling the stress of monthly because of all of the things that you've got to carry. And part of that is because maybe your cash arrives unevenly. And then you're hit with taxes that hit as big lumps, particularly if you're doing it as an independent contractor. You're going to be responsible for quarterly taxes, and those are due when they are due. Sometimes you have what I like to call invisible obligations. These could be subscriptions or tools that you use to actually run your sales or run your commission or run your business. Maybe you have upfront costs like travel or equipment or marketing. Maybe you have to pay for your expenses in advance and then get reimbursed, right? Or sometimes you have to travel as part of reaching out to clients. You've got to go visit the client, especially when you're in the sales or discovery phase, and you may not be able to make that back until you actually start billing for the services that you're delivering. It also could be that you are overestimating what's available because you don't have your money in separate buckets. Remember, money is a tool and a tool has a job, and money is no different. So what happens is the result is that you're doing well, but you're still feeling very, very unstable. And that's not a money issue. It's really a system issue. And a system needs to start with 2 baseline numbers. That is, what is your baseline pay and what is good month pay? And if you get your bonuses or your commissions all at one time, you're treating all of that as income. You're treating all of that as revenue. And that's not necessarily what's happening, because all of that money that you're taking in needs specific jobs to do. And if you're not automatically doing that, you're just going to lump it all in one thing and think that it's all available for you to spend. And it is not. So with that as a baseline, as we move into the next part of this conversation, I'm going to be breaking this down. Remember, we've talked about what baseline is, and the word baseline goes across everything. It is, what are the core expenses for you to be able to live every day? So whether it's rent or your mortgage, whether it's your car insurance, maybe you take the metro system, maybe you have contract parking for where you parked your car, either at home or at your work. All of those things are part of the baseline, meaning they have to be paid to maintain your life. Those are the baseline. But then we're going to talk about, so what does good month pay look like? How do we break it down? How do we separate it? What are the buckets that we need to create to be able to make the money work for us and not us for the money? So coming up in the next part of our conversation, we're going to be building the actual plan. So this is where you want to go get your finance journal or your money journal. And so you can start writing these things down and figuring out, where are you? Are you making a really good salary and now you just need the next steps? Or do you? I talked about that in literally the previous episode, but if you go back to some of the episodes at the beginning of the year, I also break down, how do you calculate your baseline expenses? What needs to go in the baseline? What needs to go in the buffer? And what needs to go in the brick house? But for now, we're going to be talking about taking your commissions or taking your variable income if you're a small business or a founder or entrepreneur, and how to break that down and build a plan that's going to create more stability and actually fuel your wealth journey and all of your finance goals. Remember, segment 2 is where we're going to build the plan. If you're listening to us on AM 950, welcome, welcome, welcome. The show airs on Sundays, so check us out. A new episode happens every Sunday. You can also catch me on Instagram at Do Better with Elaine and on my YouTube channel by the same name. I'm looking forward. I hope this is helping you. We're going to get into more of this as we step into the next segment. I will see you after the break. Welcome back to the Do Different Better show. I'm your host, Elaine Rasmussen. And today we are talking about the Income Stabilization Blueprint. Just because you have variable money coming in does not mean that your life has to be variable as well, and that you have variable peace. That's what we're solving for today. Okay, now we have talked about, what do we mean by variable income? Who's included in that? We're talking about small business owners. We're talking about anybody on commission. We're talking about creatives. We're talking about artists. Anybody who has an income that might shift and flex either month to month or quarter to quarter, or for those of you who might be on a salary, but you get some kind of bonus. Maybe it's quarterly, that's maybe based on sales, or maybe it's based on performance, but you get this extra income. I'm showing you how to actually stabilize and not just be like, oh, I got a big check, let me go out and make a big spend, or let me go upgrade my life that is permanent, even though the income is not permanent. So right now is where we're going to turn the chaos into a pay system. But before we get to that, let's set some grounding principles. Your personal life should not have to match your income volatility. Even if your income is variable, your pay can be more stable if you set it up correctly. This applies to founders who are paying themselves from the business revenue, freelancers or consultants, artists and creatives with irregular pay, commission sales, meaning your straight commission, or you have a draw plus commission. You may have a salary plus quarterly or annual bonuses. However, the mechanics are all the same. And that means you need buckets, you need rules, and you need cadence. So we're going to set all of that up in the next 40 minutes or so. First of all, we're going to take this step by step. Step 1, separate the buckets. This is building the accounts or buckets that you're going to need. If your money is all in one account, your nervous system will never feel safe because every dollar has multiple jobs, and you're trying to figure out in your mind how all of those jobs are going to be done with the same amount of money. Here's the simple bucket system. You can do this with separate accounts or separate buckets, and you can even do this inside of one bank. For business owners and freelancers, this is what those buckets look like. One is called your operating or OPEX, OPEX. This is for your business expenses or operating expenditures. That's what OPEX stands for. Number 2, it's your tax set aside, because taxes are not a surprise. They're a certainty. And not only that, they are predictable as when they are due and when they are coming, usually quarterly and or annually. Number 3, owner pay. This is your personal paycheck, right? Number 4, your business buffer or runway. This is what provides the business stability. And number 5 is optional, but I think you should set it up anyways, because the whole idea is that you want to move towards this, whether you have it right now or not. And that is your profit or bonus. This is for strategic reinvestment or for owner distributions, whether those owner distributions are on an annual basis or a semi-annual basis. Or I don't recommend a monthly basis, and I talked about that in another episode, but that's the setup for my business owners. Now, for my commission or salary plus bonus earners, this is really for the individuals. Now, here are your buckets. Bucket number 1 is your bills and your checking buffer. This is your operating cash, your baseline expenses. Number 2 is a tax buffer. If your commissions create tax surprises, or if you're a 1099, you need this bucket. Bucket number 3, this is your buffer or brick house stability. And then there's number 4, which is your flex fund. This is where you're going to create optionality. And we talk about optionality. These are the things that are going to be a return on investment. Maybe it's money set aside to get a certification that is going to lead to an increase in pay or an increase in your credibility for you to charge more in your business or your consultancy. And then the bucket number 5, which is also optional. This is your bonus allocation bucket. But also this is for your deployment options that are in alignment with the rules that we're going to be setting up in the last segment. Now, if you're a W-2 with taxes withheld, you may not need a tax bucket, but you might if bonuses are under withheld or you get surprised at tax time. And many of you do. But I would even offer, even if you are a W-2 employee, that you go ahead and create that tax bucket, because especially if you're in a partnership, maybe you're head of household, you're married, joint, and filing jointly, you may have additional taxes that you have to pay when you go and file your taxes. So by having this tax account, you're not surprised or you're worried or anxious of what your tax bill is going to be. You actually now have funds that are going to be able to pay that tax bill when you go and file your taxes in the following year. The point of all of this is to separate your money by the purpose or job that it needs to function so you can stop making guesses. So that was all step number 1, creating your buckets. Now let's move into step number 2. This is where we're going to set your baseline pay, which is going to be your anchor. Baseline pay is the amount you pay yourself monthly, or maybe it's by pay period, that covers your personal baseline or your minimum viable month of living. And remember, baseline is housing plus utilities, your food, your transportation, your insurance, and minimum debt payments. That's the floor. If you don't know this number, I need you to pause. That you need to go back to step 0 and you need to go and figure out what that number is. Because you can't smooth income if you don't even know what your baseline is. Now, baseline pay should be set so your personal life doesn't whiplash. For my founders, baseline pay is often a fixed monthly transfer from the business to the owner. And some people say, can I even do that? Is that legal? Yes, it is legal, right? But you want to make sure, and this is where you want to go look and talk to your tax professional. You want to make sure that it leaves the company under the right bucket. And this is really important. This is where I see a lot of business owners and a lot of consultants get into trouble. The way it gets categorized on your accounting is important. So I definitely encourage you to seek a tax professional. If you're a new small business, or maybe you've been around and you haven't really leveraged, go find there are nonprofit organizations that provide some tax services or tax advice that can help you answer those questions. But it is okay to pay yourself from the business or take distributions from the business, but they have to be categorized correctly based on what the distribution is and what it's meant to do when it leaves, whether it's as an equity that's leaving the company, or if it's pay that's leaving the company, because those are two different categories and they get taxed very differently. So it's super, super important. I know that was a little tangent, but it was a super important tangent because I get this question a lot. Now, for my my commission earners, baseline pay is what you live on consistently, regardless of whether you have a big commission month or not. For my salary plus bonus earners, your baseline pay is your salary-based lifestyle. Your bonus is optionality fuel, not your baseline dependency. You should not be living off of your bonus and hoping and praying that when your bonus comes in, that's going to take care of your basic living expenses. If that's the situation you're in, you need to go back to building a baseline. And that needs to be, and maybe you need to go and start doing some examination of what are your expenses and what can be taken off. Because I'm going to guess some of those expenses are maybe they're wants, they're not needs. And that's a big difference. And here's another truth that I'm going to give you that might be difficult to hear. If your business cannot consistently support a reasonable baseline pay, that is not a mindset issue. That is a business model or probably pricing or sales issue. I see this a lot when I'm working with small businesses. They're like, well, I can't take a salary this time, like this month or next month. And why is that? I'm like, okay, now we need to look at actually how the business makes money. Are you offering the right service packages? Are you offering the right price? Are you underpricing yourself? Because maybe we need to get your income up, or we need to unpack how you deliver or what you're delivering. Because I often find that entrepreneurs in this situation are probably over servicing and under getting paid or undercharging for what they're providing, especially with my creatives. I see this a lot with creatives. Now, baseline pay is sacred because it actually protects your nervous system. It keeps you from making desperate decisions, especially when you're experiencing a very slow month, right? So now let's move on to step 3. This is where you're going to define your good month rules and how you're going to handle any upside. But this is where people often seem to mess up. Their good months don't just raise your mood, they tend to raise your spending because you're not paying attention. And then slow months feel like you're in free fall. And we don't want that. So we need good month rules. What are the rules that are going to guide when we have a good month? But here's a pre-decision that has to be made before we even start. And that is this mindset. When I have an extra income, here is what I do with it. You have to adopt, like, that is going to be a core principle for you. And here are 3 good month pathways that you can choose from. Option 1, I call this the good month bonus. It's very controlled, okay? You pay yourself a set percentage of the excess after taxes and your buffers are funded. So here's an example. after you meet baseline pay and your tax set aside and your buffer targets, you allow yourself to take 10 to 20% as a bonus to yourself. Okay. Option B, this is build. It's a good month buffer build. In this instance, extra income goes to build your buffer and your brick house first. This is the fastest way to create runway peace for yourself. It increases stabilization and optionality at the same time. And here's option C. This is your good month flex fund plus investing. In this instance, extra income goes to the flex fund and then to your brokerage or retirement contributions. And this is where optionality becomes leverage later. Now, here is a key rule. Good months fund future calm, not future commitments. So as part of this scenario, there's no new fixed costs based on one good month or 2 good months or even 3 good months. Now let's talk specifically about bonuses, because you asked, and yes, bonuses can be a powerful optionality boost if handled well. Now, so here's the strategy. I want you to treat bonuses like good month money. That's all that they are, right? Meaning, do not use a bonus to permanently upgrade your lifestyle unless you can sustain it at your baseline income level. Maybe, and that way that can happen is you've taken off an expense to allow for this new expense. That's how it works. A simple bonus allocation rule that works. Here are some. 30 to 50% will go into your buffer or brick house. This is creating stability. 20 to 30% goes into your flex fund, which creates your optionality. 10 to 20% goes to investing, whether that's a brokerage account or retirement. This is your leveraging. And 0 to 10% is guilt-free enjoyment, because life is amazing and you should enjoy it and you should celebrate it. And this is giving you that optionality to be able to do that. And if you're paying attention, what I gave you actually goes back to our soul method, our soul framework, which is stability, optionality, leverage, and empowerment. So you're taking your bonus check to actually funnel your money into each one of those letters, some into stability, some into your optionality, some into your leveraging, and then the enjoyment, which is your E, which is that 0 to 10% guilt-free, where you're going to put some of your bonus into. Now, don't get hung up on exact percentages. These percentages are flexible, but the whole idea is that the disbursement is non-negotiable. Bonuses should buy options and not obligations. Now, let's install the workflow, because the rules don't work without a cadence. And that's where we get into step 4, the monthly pay yourself workflow. This is where you're going to get the cadence. And to do this, you're going to need 2 rhythms. The first one is your weekly pulse. This is going to take you about 10 minutes. Again, you can do this on Saturday morning while you're having your coffee. Maybe it's Friday evening. Maybe it's Sunday evening. But it's only going to take you 10 minutes. You're just literally taking a pulse as if you were going to the doctor, and the nurse checks like, okay, make sure everything's good. How are you going? Is your blood pressure too fast? Is it too slow? Here, let's just take an examination. Number 2. And then the second part is a monthly close. So this is going to be a little bit longer. I definitely encourage you to put this on your calendar and make it the same time, the same day. You sit in the same place where you do this. Maybe it's in your office, maybe it's on your porch, but you do this on a regular basis. Maybe it's the last Friday of the month. Maybe it's the first Saturday of the month. Maybe it's the first Sunday of the month. But this is going to be 30 to 45 minutes. This is your monthly close. Okay. Now I'm going to talk about what we're going to do in the weekly pulse. Remember, this is 10 minutes. This is where you're going to do 5 things. You're going to check your inflows that are expected. Is everything hitting the way it's supposed to be hitting? Then you're going to check your major outflows. Have things been paid? What are you expecting? Has anything changed as far as what that number actually is? Then you're going to check your runway number. And I'm going to get into that more when we get into the latter part of this conversation. And then you're going to decide if any spending needs to be contained. Did you overspend when you went onto Amazon? I know I have been guilty of that, right? You're just like, ooh, in the cart, right? So now you'd be like, you're going to go, oh, yeah, you know what? I spent a little way too much on that Whole Foods shopping trip. I just put everything in the cart because I went to the store while I was hungry. It happens, okay? No drama, no judgment. This is just about creating awareness. This is not meant for you to be a self-flagellation episode. Now, for the monthly close, remember this is going to be about 30 to 40 minutes. This is where we're looking at the real workflow. So I'm going to break this down by categories. So the first is going to be for my small business owners. What you're going to do is you're going to reconcile your inflow and your expenses. Number two, you're going to fund your tax set aside. So you're going to actually move money into the tax account. Number three, this is going to be your pay baseline. Oh, you're going to pay your actual baseline owner pay, or you're just going to examine like, are you on track to pay that, right? Number four, you're going to contribute to your business buffer runway. So just like you have a buffer and a brick house for your personal life, you also need to build one for the business, right? No matter what the business is. Again, if you're a restaurant, whether you are you make tea, you make pies, I don't care what it is. You also need a buffer and a brick house and a baseline for your business. And number five, you're going to apply the good month rule. What are you going to do with the funds when you have a good month, right? You're going to do buffer, you're going to do your flex fund, and you're going to do a bonus. Number six, you're going to update your runway number and next month's focus. What are you going to focus on next month? Okay. Now, for my commission earners, what you're going to do is your total income for the month. You're going to have your baseline, pay your baseline bills from your baseline plan. You're going to allocate excess based on your good month rule, and you're going to top up your buffers and flex funds. And finally, you're going to review next month's pipeline to see what's coming up, or are you expecting another good month, or are things going to be down? Now, for my salary and plus bonus earners, you're going to make sure your salary is going to cover your baseline. You're going to make sure that your bonus is allocated via your buffer, flex, and invest rule. And you're going to make sure that there are no permanent commitments unless those expenses are sustainable at your current salary level. This is how you're going to stop emotional and financial roller coasting. Now, coming up, we're now going to do the runway math. So you have a clear number that tells you what mode you're in: stabilize, tighten, optimize, or investing. You're listening to the Do Different Better show. I'm your host, Elaine Rasmussen, and I will see you after the break. Welcome back. You are listening to the Do Different Better show. I'm your host, Elaine Rasmussen. And we have been talking about what to do when you have variable income, whether you're on commission, you get bonuses, or maybe you're a small business, a creative, or an artist. How do you actually stabilize your financial life to be in alignment with your wealth journey? All right, we're heading into the finish line. You've hung with me. This is amazing. You're great. You're doing great. Just keep breathing in and out. You're doing amazing. And this is the part that makes you feel like a CEO instead of a hostage to your own money. Because runway isn't fear. Runway is leadership. When you know your runway, you stop reacting to feelings and start really responding to facts and data, which I love. We're going to be creating two different runways. I'm going to provide you with a business runway for my entrepreneurs and a personal runway. And this is for anybody who has variable income and they're a W-2 employee or a 1099. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to create some runway math, right? And this is going to be pretty simple, but it might seem a little confusing if you're driving in the car, especially if you have a natural aversion to math. This is going to be easy, I promise you. It's more algebra. These are word problems, but you're going to figure this out, I promise. Don't freak out. So first, let's talk about the business. For a business runway, your business runway is cash in the business buffer account, right? Divided by your average monthly operating expenses. Again, if you don't know what that number is, you've got to figure out that number first before you do anything else. Then come back and let's do this exercise. But for those of you, you're like, I know what that number is. I'm going to give you an example. If you have $30,000 in your business buffer and your monthly operating expenses are actually $10,000, then your runway is $30,000 divided by $10,000, which equals 3 months of runway. That's it. Now, for your personal runway, this is your brick house divided by your personal baseline or your household baseline if you're supporting your entire household. If you have $12,000 in personal brick house, your baseline is $4,000 a month. Here's the equation. It's 12,000 divided by 4,000, which equals 3 months of personal runway. Now, here's the combined question. How long can I operate without new revenue while keeping baseline pay stable? That is your piece number. Now, let's set the safety line. For my variable income household, a minimum safety line is 2 to 3 months of runway, right? And we just calculated the runway number, right? Founders with higher volatility may want more. Often it's good common business practice that you should have 6 months of runway, right? So that means your revenue or what's on cash on hand divided by your monthly expenses, you want to have a minimum of 6 months. But you might be starting out. You may not have 6 months. So that's why taking part of your revenue every month and putting it aside, that's what starts to build that buffer for you. Because below that line, your nervous system is going to go in to do what it does, which is it's going to panic, it's going to overwork. That's when you start getting desperate, you start undercutting your price, and those desperate decisions have a negative financial impact. So we define runway in zones. And this is what I want you to think about. Zone 1, this is 0 to 1 month of runway, which means your focus needs to be on building more stabilization, not necessarily going out and buying new equipment, but how do you optimize all the things you have, whether that's humans, whether that's your equipment, or whether that's the time that you're maximizing the amount of time you have to dedicate to what it is you're doing. The purpose of this is to stop the hemorrhaging, right? You want to cut non-essential expenses. You want to accelerate some of your deliverables. You want to follow up on invoices aggressively, especially those 30 and 60-day ones that haven't been paid. Call them and leverage collections on them if they have not paid you and your terms are net 15 or net 30. You want to pause any discretionary expenses. Don't not take on new fixed costs. And consider some temporary income measures. Maybe I've done this in my businesses. I've gone a couple of months without paying myself. Again, because I had a personal buffer, I was able to not get paid by my business because I already had a personal buffer that was going to take care of my regular monthly expenses. Zone 2, this is 1 to 3 months of runway. Here's where if you're in this situation, you're going to tighten and leverage this as an opportunity to continue to build. You're not necessarily like dying, but you're also not feeling very relaxed. In this instance, you want to build a buffer before you expand. You're going to focus on your margins and pricing and expenses. You want to tighten your pay plan, and you want to increase sales activity in your pipeline, but you also want to keep your baseline pay stable but conservative. Now, zone 3. This is where you've got 3 to 6 months of runway. Here's where you can optimize and think about some strategic improvements. Maybe you would invest in some systems that actually creates that it'll take you less time to do what you do, or you bring on more talent, you hire selectively, or you start working on building your flex fund. Also, this might be where you're increasing your investing contributions. Even in a business, you are allowed to take some of the business profits and invest them for the long-term sustainability of the business. Maybe you get a high yield savings account, or maybe you put some money into a money market account. Not all of the money in the account. You take a portion of that money and you put it in, right? Or you use it to refine operations. And now there's zone 4. This is when you have 6 months of runway, and now you can actually do some strategic growth plus doing some leverage. This is where you can take some thoughtful risk. Maybe it's expansion. Maybe it's acquiring another business or some other type of acquisition. Maybe it's higher level investing, or perhaps it's stepping into leveraging moves that are part of your framework. Now we're going to get into the monthly workflow in a whiteboard style, right? I don't have a whiteboard, so we're just going to have to imagine it. I want you to imagine this like a monthly CEO meeting with yourself, right? And I suggest you call it that. Put it on the calendar, monthly CEO meeting. Now, maybe you do this with a friend, maybe you do this with a sibling, or maybe you just do it with yourself. All of the above are fine. But I want you to write these 6 lines on your notebook, on a whiteboard, or in a Google Doc. Number 1, what came in? What were the total inflows of money from all revenue streams or all income streams? What went out? These are your operating plus your personal baseline outflows that actually happened. Number 3, taxes first. What are you putting towards the taxes? And what's the set aside transfer amount that it's going to be? Next, what is going to be the baseline pay? What is the owner pay that's going to come out? And again, this should equate with your baseline, right? Next, buffers plus flex. So this is the business buffer. How much is going to go into the buffer, the business buffer? And then what's going to go into the flex fund, and what's going to go into your buffer fund? Then finally, your good month rule. If a surplus exists, what are you going to allocate, and to how much is going to be allocated to bonus percentage, to investing, and towards future calm. Then you're going to update the runway. So runway equals the buffer divided by your monthly burn. Now, decision rules, because the goal is peace and not just math. And so here are some decision rules for you for your variable income piece. And these are going to allow you to keep from going back and rebuilding chaos and having your nervous system run amok. Number 1, no new fixed costs unless the baseline pay has been stable for 3 months. This helps you prevent lifestyle creep, which is very easy to do. Number 2, if the runway drops below X number of months, and you get to decide what that is it 2 months, 3 months, 6 months? This is when you start to activate stabilization mode. X months might be 2 for some, it might be 3 for others. And if you want more, you can add more. Number 3, and this is what you're going to say to yourself. If I feel panic, I check runway, not headlines. Your feelings are data, but runway is truth. Number 4, good month money goes to the buffer before it goes to lifestyle upgrades. This is how you turn volatility into optionality. Number 5, bonuses say options, not obligations. If you're commission-based or bonus-heavy, bonuses should fund your buffer, your flex fund, or your invest fund before you upgrade your life, right? I know that sounds harsh. I know we want what we want. We want to feel good. We want to drive that nicer car. We want to have that nice handbag. But remember, we are building a wealth journey, right? Just because you're not giving it to yourself today does not mean you will never give it to yourself, right? We want to make sure that when you give it to yourself, everything else is taken care of. And everything else is taken care of not for 1 month, but ongoing. So now for a moment, all of you who are on commission, you commission earners, I'm going to talk to you directly. You need a more smooth system. So if you are on straight commission or on a draw plus commission, you are essentially a small business. Your paycheck fluctuates just like a small business. However, your obligations do not. So Your smoothing system is your baseline living expenses based on a conservative average income. You can look at your last year and you can say what was the average total of all 12 months of income, or quarterly, however you get paid, and then divide that by 12. That is your average income. Any excess commission goes to your buffer, flex, and investing by the rules that you've set up, but also no lifestyle commitments based on the biggest check you've ever received. We're not going to be lying to ourselves or soothing ourselves into a reality that doesn't exist. This is what keeps you from the commission trap, meaning big month equals big spending, which then leads to slow months, which then lead to panic. We're not doing that. That's why you're here, right? Now, for my creatives, your smoothing system is that you're creating your baseline plus conservative budgeting, a separate account for taxes if you're a 1099, and pipeline tracking and runway awareness, and a flex fund for creative investments that actually increase your income or stability. Again, this is where you might take a class where you're going to learn a talent or a skill that's going to allow you to expand your repertoire, or to be able to charge a higher price or get access to different kinds of work, whatever that looks like. But the point of all of this is the same. You don't need prediction. You need structure that turns variable inflows into stable decision-making for ongoing wealth creation, or just being able to live the life that you are looking to create. Now, I'm going to close out with this action. Here is your thing that I'm going to ask you to do today. Go to the website, www.dodifferentbetter, and you're going to download the Income Stabilization Blueprint. Everything that I've talked about is going to be in there, and you're going to do these 3 steps. 1, you're going to set your baseline pay. That's going to be an actual number. Next, you're going to set a good month rule. 1 rule, not all of them, 1, okay? And number 3, you're going to calculate your runway. That is a fact that you will constantly go back to. And I want you to write it in big letters. Get markers if you need to, because then that is going to stay in your brain. That's it. You're creating a number, you're creating a rule, and you're identifying a fact. I really, really believe if you do this, you are going to feel some immediate peace, just because you have some unknowns or things that have been swimming around your head now on paper. And if you want a full walkthrough, head over to YouTube and you can listen to this and watch on Do Different Better, and catch this episode where I talk through this, because maybe you're a visual learner, and that's okay. But this is where we're going to be building this step by step, turning income into optionality. I can't wait to see you next time when I show you how to do different better.